Rugby union is an intermittent team sport played over two 40-minute halves. The physiological demands of rugby are complex and hard to measure and predict compared to that of individual sports such as swimming, cycling or running. During a game, players will experience a variety of physiological responses as a result of repeated high-intensity sprints and a high incidence of contact. While each positional group has different roles and demands during the game, the ability to maintain speed over a number of repeated sprint efforts is essential for all rugby players to have. The current clip is a perfect example of how fast and intense a passage of play can be during a game of rugby. Note how fast the ball moves around the field and how certain players, especially the forwards and the inside backs, are required to back up effort after effort to stay involved in the play. While getting rugby players to perform lab-based physiological tests such as VO2 max or lactic threshold tests, it is rarely practical or financially viable to put a whole squad of 30 plus players through these tests. Field-based anaerobic and aerobic capacity tests have been used and justified for rugby teams. These field tests include 1.2 km time trial, which involves 20 metre, 40 metre and 60 metre return shuttle runs, a beep test, yo-yo intermittent recovery level 1 and level 2 tests, 30-15 tests, and the repeated sprint ability tests. The repeated sprint ability test was designed to assess the athlete's ability to recover between sprints and produce the same level of power repeatedly. This test has been used in a high-performance setting for multiple intermittent team sports such as rugby, rugby league, soccer, basketball, AFL, and netball. The development of a repeated sprint ability test for rugby union players was due to a questionable application of rugby match requirements to training, prescription, and athlete testing. The repeated sprint ability test examines the player's ability to perform under conditions closer to that of a rugby union game. For example, the 6x30 metre repeated sprint ability test is used to assess players using sprint distances and recovery times similar to those experienced during matches using GPS data. The rugby-specific repeat sprint ability test has 15 seconds active recovery between each effort, where the athlete walks 5 metres around a marker and back to the start line. To ensure the athlete is performing to the highest standard possible, there are a few variables that need to be controlled during the days leading up to the test. A high carbohydrate diet should be consumed during the 2 days leading up to the test. The athletes should eat 2 hours prior to testing to ensure food has been digested and fuel sources can be utilised. Athletes should have at least 6 hours sleep during the 2 nights prior to the test. Optimal water consumption should be consumed during the 2 days prior to testing. Previous studies have recommended 1 litre of water per 25 kilos of body mass per day. All of these variables should be recorded and replicated for future tests. The repeated sprint ability test for rugby union players requires the use of the following equipment: 2 speedlight timing gates and 2 receivers, 4 tripods, a computer or tablet with the speedlight program installed, a measuring tape capable of measuring 30 meters or measuring wheel, and 6 markers. A measuring wheel was used to measure out 30 meters on a rugby union playing field. 2 cones were set up at each end of the 30-meter distance to form gates for which the athlete will run through. 2 cones are also set up 5 meters past each gate for the athlete to walk past to ensure they get active recovery between each sprint. The speed gates were set up in line with each other on either side of the gate. The laser pointer on the timing gates was used to ensure they were set up on the appropriate positions. When conducting a repeated sprint ability test with rugby union players, it is important to conduct an appropriate warm-up due to the maximal intensity of the test. Warm-up should include activation of the gluteals, hamstrings, quadriceps and calves, as well as hip and calf mobility, really emphasizing triple extension of the lower extremity. The athlete is then instructed to complete 3 accelerations, increasing speed each time so they are at full sprint by the third effort. Once everything has been set up and the athlete has completed the appropriate warm-up protocol, the test can begin. Familiarity of the test can often have a significant effect on the result. As can be seen during the first effort, this athlete ran well past the cone and therefore struggled to make the start of the next run. In an attempt to make the test as applicable to the sport of rugby, previous studies have recommended the test be done in playing footwear on a grass playing field. This will ensure the athlete is tested while in the same environment the games will be played in. It is recommended athletes are retested every 6 to 8 weeks to ensure the appropriate training adaptations are being met. Industry standards dictate the test should be completed in the same conditions every time. This is to ensure the test maintains its reliability. There are various alternatives of the repeated sprint ability test. However, the 6 x 30 metre efforts with 15 seconds active recovery was developed specifically for rugby union players and is the most valid and reliable test when testing their repeated sprint capacity. Previous studies have reported a significant correlation between percentage change in speeds over the 6 efforts in rugby union players and their VO2 max results. Once the test has been concluded, the times for all 6 efforts are recorded and the drop-off in speed is noted, and a percentage change in time over all 6 efforts is calculated.